Dun, 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 dun.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Wess. I am celebrating Inktober today with a inked drawing. It's kind of a sketch and ink wash as well. This is of my 4 brothers and I. Just thought I would do this. For this past few weeks, I haven't been painting very much, and so I haven't had a video to upload. I've got several that I've started, but just haven't finished the paintings, and 1 or 2 that I just abandoned. So thought I'd at least have something quick and easy to upload. And this was really more of a practice exercise for me. I don't do a lot of ink. I don't do a lot of drawing at all, for that matter. But rarely do I do ink sketches and ink washes and that sort of thing. Anyway, so this one's a little different for that reason. And it's not going to be for sale or anything, and it didn't turn out great. I'd probably give myself a solid C+ on if I were to grade it. But I'm not a professional inker or drawer. I'm good at painting, my style of painting, but that's about it. But we can always improve, and that's part of the point of doing these types of exercises, expanding our creative reach, so to speak. So yeah, I'm just going through and sketching this out. I chose a size that was double that of my reference photo, which I printed out. So it makes the measurements easy, so I can get everything exactly where I want it. That's why I have my ruler out here, and I'm just kind of giving it a basic sketch. Hindsight, I should have done a little better with getting the faces right, because some of them just did not turn out very well. Here I go sketching my own face. Back when I had short cropped hair. All of us have a lot of hair in this video, beards mostly. I don't have a lot to say on this part of the process. It's just kind of a matter of sketching and adjusting and erasing and getting things close to where they'll be. Part of my mindset was just not to worry about getting it all right. So in that sense, I did just fine on this whole exercise, because I know that I'm not the best at this. And so anytime I'm faced with those prospects, I'm pretty quick to forgive myself for any, shortcomings, perceived or otherwise, I may have. So yeah, you can tell what that is. It's, not a terrible sketch. It's just not ideal. And the pen I'm using here, I'm using a little, it's just like a nib in a holder, so it's just a dip pen. But it also wasn't the best to use for this. I didn't do a lot of planning beforehand, but I knew I had this permanent India ink, so I was going to use that, and I just kind of rummaged through my art supplies and found this dip pen, which alternates between being too scratchy and difficult to make a mark, to go to the other extreme where it's putting down too thick a stream of ink. So that was a little frustrating, and took a little while to get used to. And I also wasn't sure how much to do with the pen and how much to do with the brush later in the form of washes. On some of the faces I started doing cross-hatching for shadow areas, and so I had to do a little bit of that on all of them. But I realized pretty quickly that I would be doing the ink washes later, so I tried not to do that too much. So a better, maybe a newer nib for the pen might have been in order. This one, for all I know, it's all rusty and bent. I didn't really take a close look at it other than just to test it out. And once I got going, I didn't really slow down as far as assessing what I was doing. It was more of just getting through it. So all in all, it was a pretty quick process. I stopped longer after I sketched the whole thing out before I got to the ink wash part, but even here, I remember on the second brother's face, it took me a while to even figure out what I was looking at, because I was, pretty much sketching it as I was going. I didn't have the details marked out in the glasses, for instance, or any of that. So that turned out a bit awkward. Looking back at it on the video, it's not quite as bad as it seemed like it was. For instance, this third brother's forehead is way too big and boxy looking. I do correct it by the end of the video. I end up actually scratching out that top right corner of the head and correcting it, bringing it in slightly, and that helped a lot, as well as adjusting the eyes just a bit. Not a lot you can do once you place down permanent ink as far as moving lines and that sort of thing, but I am using good watercolor paper, so you can actually use a blade to scratch out a little mark here and there. You have to be careful if you do that not to go heavy on the ink wash, because it might make those scratches appear darker than normal, and just look funny for that matter. So be aware of that if you use that scratching method. But sometimes you can even use it for highlights. If you have little spots of white that needs to show through after the fact, you can scratch out some highlights if you're very careful. But of course, permanent ink is probably the worst candidate for this. I'm sure, like with watercolor, a lot of times you can re-wet the canvas and kind of scrub out some of the color, but with permanent ink, it's permanent for a reason. That's why they call it that. Despite giving myself an average grade on the project here, I don't regret doing it. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'll try to do more of this. Inktober was just I ran across other video posts of it this week or this month on on the subject, Inktober. I don't know who made it up or where it comes from, but I'm sure some artist somewhere decided that's a funny sounding month and might as well dedicate it to ink. So I'm on board. It sounds great. So I've got, the majority of the faces all done and kind of going through and correcting some here and there. They're not perfect. Oh, here I'm starting with the washes now, with the wash. Trying not to go too dark at first because I can always darken it later. But then I realized, well, it would actually look better if they had a dark area around the faces here to let them pop out, so I decided to go ahead and darken those areas. I did get a new brush for this process, and that was nice to work with. It's just a watercolor brush, a round pointed brush. I'm also thinking of doing more watercolor for that matter. I enjoyed this wash process as well. My main focus, of course, is getting the values correct so they all kind of mesh together, and putting in shadows so that the faces aren't flat but they're rounded. I frankly enjoy doing all the shirts a lot better than the faces in this image, in this painting. It's much more successful at it, that's for sure. I don't know if I've revealed this in other videos of mine, but I'm a pretty harsh critic when it comes to looking at my own paintings and drawings and things. Kind of the first thing you learn when learning to paint or to draw, etc., is what you don't know, like the areas where you can improve. You're kind of recognizing the patterns that beginner artists fall into and trying to avoid those pitfalls, but inevitably falling into them anyway when you're first starting out, for sure. But as we get more experience and have more practice under our belts, we get better. That's the goal. So anyway, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the change of pace. This was fun. Thanks for watching.